What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Bugatti Divo Magma Edition versus the beloved Emerald Storm Edition. And if you guys were wondering, the biggest difference with these cars is obviously going to be the color, but the Emerald Storm is also going to be insanely rare as well. I really do think this car is most likely going to make a return in one of the upcoming seasons, at least before Motorfest actually does release, but I will also be doing some comparisons on the other Bugattis in the future, so let me know in the comments below which Bugattis you would like to see go against each other. I do know I have to do the Divo versus like the Emerald Storm or like the Deep Blue Edition. It's kind of insane how many Bugattis are actually in this game, but nonetheless, guys, starting off here at the lovely Divo Magma Edition is once again probably the most sought after Bugatti in the Crew 2, which definitely sounds kind of hilarious considering there's 14 of these. Now what's kind of interesting, guys, is these cars are going to be kind of similar but also different in many ways as well, which is pretty interesting. So the first thing I wanted to do with the Divo Magma Edition though is to do a top speed test, and when I was testing this car out with a nitrochemist set on that highway by Vegas, basically near the salt flats as well, I managed to get this car to hit around 320 miles per hour. That's going to make the Divo Magma Edition one of the fastest hypercars in the Crew 2. What's also pretty insane, guys, is the fact that I did hear that the 300 Super Sport actually got nerfed a little bit, and apparently I heard it can't actually hit 335 miles an hour now. If that's actually the case though, because I honestly do not drive that car all that often, I do have a feeling some of these other Bugattis like the Divo Magma Edition are 100% going to make a return back into the game here. I do know a lot of players also would like to see the Magma Edition actually make a return and or have a new quote-unquote meta car in the hypercar category, mainly because the 300 Super Sport can basically do everything, but nonetheless though, the Magma Edition is definitely going to remain one of my favorites. The Magma Edition, guys, really is going to be an awesome car though. For one, it's going to look insanely unique compared to the other Divo and or the regular Divo in the game. It's also going to have slightly better performance from what I have tested. I most likely will do some type of comparison versus the regular Divo as well, but overall, guys, you have a Bugatti here that can do 320 miles per hour with a nitrochemist set, if you guys might have been wondering though. The Magma Edition will not actually do 320 miles per hour unless you guys are running a nitrochemist set. When I normally do the hyper events, I actually run a Fame Magnet set instead. That way I get a lot more followers and or that bonus for extra money as well. I noticed this car will only do around like maybe 300 miles per hour depending on the road you are on. So do keep that in mind if you guys are racing like solo doing events. You will not be able to do the actual 320 miles per hour without that nitrochemist set, but even with that, guys, the Bugatti Divo is still going to be an awesome car. One way you can actually get around this though is if you guys are racing in summits and or some of the bigger events, you can lower the gearbox by 1 point, which definitely does seem to help with the overall acceleration, and that way if you guys can't actually hit that top speed depending on your set and or which build you guys might be going for, losing a little bit of top speed is most likely not going to hurt this car. And on some of these shorter events, like some of these shorter hypercar races, and or like we have one of those weird mixed events where you have to use like a hypercar in a street event, you will not mind losing some of that top speed to have better acceleration. So it's kind of like a win-win situation with the Bugattis, because even if the gearbox is all the way up, I noticed some of them might not have the best acceleration, but even with some of the Bugattis feeling slightly slower with their overall acceleration, all you will then have to do is move that point on the gearbox down one time, and you can basically compete with every other hypercar with no issues. Overall, guys, the Magma Edition is still going to remain one of the best hypercars in the Crew 2, and I would probably say a lot of players might even pick this car over the 300 Super Sport. And now moving over to the Bugatti Divo Emerald Storm Edition's actually going to be an insanely rare vehicle. Believe it or not, guys, when this car actually came out, the summit was only going up to 3,000 people for Platinum. This summit was honestly insanely intense, and to this day, I actually remember this one being one of the hardest summits in the game because my goodness, everybody wanted this car. Even though it's basically a green version of the Magma, I really do like the green on this car over the orange in some ways though. though, and then I also like the orange as well, so you really can't go wrong though. But what also makes these cars insanely unique though is the fact that you can't make the regular Divo look anything like this one either. So one thing I found awesome is the fact that the Emerald Storm is also going to have the exact same top speed as the Magma Edition, guys. 320 miles per hour once again on this car. It is really going to make it one of the better Bugattis and or one of the fastest hypercars once again in the Crew 2. I find this kind of insane because now we're going to have multiple Bugattis doing over 300, which is probably going to make sense considering every single Bugatti in this game seems to do over 300 miles per hour, but the Bugatti Emerald Storm Edition, guys, is still going to remain one of my favorites, even though a lot of players are most likely going to use the Magma Edition. I have a feeling though, if this car does actually make a return into the game, I really do think a lot of players are most likely going to go after this, and I really do think that's probably going to be just as intense as the So French Summit. If not, it might actually be slightly worse because this car has only been in the game one time. I have a feeling it's probably going to be one crazy summit when this car actually does return. I really do hope it does though, that way it does give a player a chance to actually use it. Motorfest is definitely coming up pretty fast here, so I feel like lots of players are most likely going after many of the cars on the Crew 2 and or pretty much all of them to actually complete the collection. You will definitely want to have the Emerald Storm if you guys don't have this car. Now, one of my favorite things about this might actually sound kind of funny. I did mention earlier I like how the lime green goes around it instead of the orange. It's almost like a lime green neon color that goes around the Divo, and my goodness, it looks so dang good. I really do feel like a lot of players also want this car because it's kind of insane it only came out one time, and I'm sure a lot of players might be wondering how this car is going to be different. So one of the first things I noticed when driving the Emerald Storm compared to the Magma is probably going to be the handling of this car compared to the Magma. Believe it or not, guys, with both of these cars being exactly the same, just different colors, I actually found both of them to handle slightly differently in some way. So before, one of my biggest gripes with the Bugattis was the fact that going over a hill and or uneven ground, I noticed the cars tend to lose themselves a little bit. One thing I notice about the Emerald Storm though is the fact that this car doesn't actually have issues going over like hills and or uneven ground. It doesn't seem to want to start losing control like some of the other Bugattis did before. I guess I could say the same thing about the Magma Edition not doing this either. But what's really crazy to me, guys, is the fact that both of these cars actually handle differently. In some ways, I honestly like the Magma a bit more than the Emerald. And then in some ways, I was also liking the way the Emerald Storm felt around corners as well. So I guess you really can't go wrong with either car if you guys do want to pick one over the other. I feel like some players are most likely going to like the lime green over like the orange. When it comes to overall performance though, both of the cars basically have the exact same acceleration and basically the exact same top speed as well, so they're not going to be any different in those aspects. I would say the biggest difference is probably going to be the way these cars actually feel when racing them. I feel like one player might actually want one more than the other. I personally would probably run either one of these cars and have a great time doing it, like in summits or messing around in different hypercar events. I feel like you really can't go wrong with either one of these Bugattis. It's kind of insane, guys, because the Emerald Storm and or the Magma Edition really are going to be insanely similar to each other. In some ways, I actually feel like it's going to be based on preference for many players. It's most likely going to come down to like the color of these cars and or if one might handle slightly different than the other, but overall, guys, I really do love both of these Bugattis for everything. I still feel like they're going to remain some of the best hypercars in the game, regardless of how many times the 300 Super Sport is nerfed. I really do feel like the Magma and or the Emerald Storm can easily give that car a running for its money. I do want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Which Bugatti is going to be your favorite and why? I'm also planning on doing more comparisons with some of the Bugattis and or different cars in general, so definitely stay tuned for that in the future. But one thing I do want to mention, I actually will be showing two different pro settings for the Emerald Storm, both of which I found to be insanely good but also slightly different. I do want to know what you guys think about these Bugattis once again in the comments below. And here are the settings on the Emerald Storm and the Magma Edition.